Do you have a reaction to the Alabama Supreme Court ruling on the fact that embryos are children?
Yeah, I was all for it. We need to have more kids. We need to have an opportunity to do that. And I thought this was the right thing to do. But
IVF is used to have more children, and right now IVF services are paused at some of the clinics in Alabama. Aren't you concerned that this could impact people who are trying to have kids?
Well, that's for another conversation. People need to have. We need more kids. We need the people to have the opportunity to have kids.
Senator, what do you say to the women right now in Alabama who no longer have access to IVF, or who will not, as a result of this ruling? What do you say to them?
Well, that's a hard one. It really is. It's really hard. Because, again, you want people to have that opportunity. And that's what I was telling her. We need more kids.
Oh God, look, I try to be as professional as I can in these videos, but Tommy Tuberville is so stupid I am surprised he can dress himself. Here's the deal. The Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos created and stored for in vitro fertilization, IVF, are children under a state law, opening up IVF clinics to lawsuits for wrongful death of those children in certain instances. The result is that to avoid liability, fertility clinics are halting treatments, and families that relied on IVF to build their families now can't. In this clip, sentient jockstrap Tommy Tuberville says that he supports the Alabama decision because he says that we need to have more kids, even though the ruling literally precludes families from using IVF, which is how we get more kids, because Tommy Tuberville is an abject moron who decided that football somehow qualified him to make decisions that would impact anything other than a scoreboard. I mean, just watch that clip. He keeps rattling off that we need more kids, even though he and his party support the very decision that will now make such a thing exponentially more difficult. And let's be clear, they are responsible. The Alabama Supreme Court is as conservative as it gets, and the IVF decision was informed by the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe, which Republicans applaud unanimously. According to Slate's Mark Joseph Stern, in case it weren't clear enough, the majority opinion repeatedly cites Dobbs for the proposition that the unborn are living human beings. This is a direct result of Dobbs. And so when Republicans begin to encounter the backlash to yet another massive encroachment on reproductive rights in this country, and they inevitably try to distance themselves from this decision, just remember that they applauded every step of the way that actually got us here. In fact, Democrats actually introduced a bill specifically to protect IVF called the Right to Build Families Act back in December of 2022, and it was blocked by Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. And before that, the Right to Contraception Act was blocked by Senator Joni Ernst. So I'm sorry, but Republicans do not get to pretend that they're champions of building families when they applauded Dobbs, which was cited by the Alabama Supreme Court's decision, and when they blocked bills specifically intended to protect IVF. Per usual, this is what it looks like when government theocrats insert themselves between you and your doctor, all the while beating their chest as the party of freedom, as the party of family values. No party has been more destructive to freedom and family values than the modern Republican Party. And don't take my word for it, take it from the families themselves who are suffering as a result of this massive overreach by the party of big government.
I want to be a mom, and we want to build a family, and I think that should be our choice.
Emily Capalo and her husband James stored their embryos at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. It's the biggest of 3 providers that have now halted new IVF treatments, the process used by 238,000 Americans every year to help get pregnant.
This is an incredibly grueling physical, mental, and emotional process.
The couple has spent more than $50,000 on treatments over 2 years and had hoped to schedule their first embryo transfer next month.
I do feel like that timeline is in jeopardy. We are on an indefinite pause.
Kelly is using IVF after trying to get pregnant for 2 years. They started treatments in October. Kelly and Jimmy, thank you both for being here. I wonder, to you, Kelly, when you first heard about this ruling and that it could affect IVF treatments, what went through your mind?
Initially just terror, because we've already invested so much time and money and just physical and emotional anguish into this process, and to think that it could have all been for nothing and that we could be ending our journey to be able to have children. It was absolutely terrifying.
And Kelly, did you ever think that this debate about abortion access, Roe versus Wade, all of that would impact your ability to actually have a child?
No, never. in my mind, I didn't see the correlation. It never occurred to me that people would take the overturning of Roe v. Wade and link it to IVF, because at its very core, IVF is trying to create life and build families. So I just don't understand the jump. I never would have imagined this.
Jimmy, there are a lot of politicians. I mean, I'm here in Washington, but in your home state, elsewhere in this country, who support this ruling from the Alabama Supreme Court. If you were to talk to them, what would you say to them about how this impacts you, how this impacts your family?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would ask them is, did they do any actual research before making this decision, or was it on a whim based on, riding the high of overturning Roe v. Wade? I would ask them, how would they feel if their granddaughter or their daughter was trying to have a child via IVF and this ruling prevented them from doing it? How would they feel? How would they feel about the fact that they're halting families from growing or even starting? There's a lot of questions in my mind.
Yeah, so many questions. I mean, Kelly, so many women, they are so desperate to have a family, and it is so expensive and as you just mentioned, physically taxing to go through this process. I know that your clinic is moving forward. That's great to hear. But how are you doing emotionally with all of this uncertainty?
It's extremely stressful. At this point, I feel like something that was already taking a huge chunk of my life is now essentially consuming my life completely.
The truth is that this is the natural conclusion of a political party whose only guiding principle is forcing their extreme religious views onto the rest of the population that isn't interested. They profess to be these champions of freedom, but they work on a daily basis to strip those freedoms away. And so now, in 2024, regular Americans who want nothing more than a family of their own can't, because a bunch of religious zealots, many of whom don't even know the implications of their own actions, looking at you, Tommy Tuberville, don't know how to let people live their lives without imposing their doctrines onto them. And let's be clear, if Republicans gain power in November, it will only get worse. This right here isn't the end, it is the beginning. It's a warning shot. It's not just the Democrats and the Republicans on the ballot in November, it is our very freedom. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.